Broadcasting to you from somewhere deep in the heart of Texas. Once again, it's me, Penny Ann. You guys, I'm having internet connectivity issues. I don't know what's going on, but the last two broadcasts that I've done have been deleted for some odd, weird reason. So, anyway, I don't know what that's all about, but they were deleted from StreamYard and from YouTube. That's it's not. I don't think it's normal for your broadcast to get deleted like that, but they did get deleted. So I'm gonna try it again and see what happens. So you guys, you know that feeling someone has done you wrong and you have the chance to do wrong back to them. But should you? I mean, what could happen if you do? And if you choose to do the right thing instead, Proverbs 17:13 says, whoso rewardeth evil for good, evil shall not depart from his house. So we all know people who've returned evil to us for good that we did to them. So I want to talk to you today about how the Lord repays someone who does that, someone who returns evil for good. Uriah and Hittite was one of King David's mighty men. He was an honorable man, so honorable, in fact, that when the other soldiers could not be home lying with their wives, he refused to go lie with his, even though the king bid him do so. Now we know this story. And we know the reason King David wanted Uriah to go home and lie with Bathsheba was because he himself, King David, had gotten her with child in Uriah's absence. And King David, he was a wonderful king and the most highly anointed king up to, Jesus spoken of in the Bible. But he had a weakness for beautiful women, and he especially had a weakness for Bathsheba. When he saw her, because he got into idolatry over her, he wanted her so much he was willing to break the commandments of God to have her, and he did. Now, Wikipedia states the Talmud states two opinions as to who Uriah was. One, he was a convert to Judaism, citation needed, and he lived amongst Hittites and so is known as a Hittite despite his being born Jewish. Kedushin. Either way, he wasn't actually part of the Hittite nation since he would have been forbidden to marry Bathsheba had he been a Gentile. So I found this online in my research about David's mighties, as the mighty men were called, of which Uriah was one. Now, David's mighty men were a group of his best 37 fighters, later, expanded to around 80. But although the list of his mighty men in 2 Samuel 23, 8 through 39, and then 1 Chronicles 11, 10 through 47 are given after David has become king, many of them may have been the loyal followers who stayed with him when he was fleeing King Saul. And at the very least, they fought with him. Uriah's closeness to David is illustrated by how closely he lived to the palace and his position as one of the mighty men at the front line, battle lines, and then allowed David, to formulate and carry out his plot. So I always found it incredibly sad that Uriah the Hittite, Bathsheba's husband, was very devoted to his king. He would have done anything for King David, and he was such an honorable man. He only ever did good to King David. In 2 Samuel 11, 8 and 9, and David said to Uriah, go down to thy house and wash thy feet. And Uriah departed out of the king's house, and there followed him a mess of meat from the king. But Uriah slept at the door of the king's house with all the servants of his lord, and went not down to his house. Uriah said unto David, the ark and Israel and Judah abide in tents, and my lord Joab and the servants of my lord are encamped in the open fields. Shall I then go into mine house to eat and drink, and to lie with my wife? As thou livest and thy soul liveth, I will do not this thing. And when David had called him, he did eat and drink before him, and he made him drunk. And at even he went out to lie on his bed with the servants of his Lord, but went not down to his house. And Wikipedia says it was common for warriors in preparation for battle to abstain from sex as a practice of discipline. And one of the other things I find incredibly sad about this story is that poor loyal Uriah actually delivered his own death warrant, never suspecting a thing. And it came to pass in the morning that David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it by the hand of Uriah. And he wrote in the letter, saying, "Set ye Uriah in the forefront of the hottest battle, and retire ye from him, that he may be smitten and die." So King David, I don't think out of malice in his case, but because he was trying so desperately to hide his sin, had Uriah the Hittite killed with the sword of the enemy. And of course, we think we would never do that. We would never do that. I mean, I would never do that, would you? Or would we? I mean, the swords of others are not the only weapons we assassinate others with. We use the tongues of others to ruin their reputations whenever we gossip. And we use the power of others to hire and fire whenever we talk about someone's work ethic. And we use their social power to accept or reject any time we influence someone about another's character. We use many weapons to return evil for good, but we shouldn't. You know, the penalty for returning evil for good is very high. It may feel good in that moment to smear their name or to cast them away from you in some other way, but the price is exorbitant. I mean, let's look at the price King David paid. And let's remember, too, that he was the most highly favored king in the Bible before Jesus. This is another reminder, y'all, that the rules are the same for everybody. 2 Samuel 12. And the Lord sent Nathan unto David, and he came unto him and said unto him, There were two men in one city, one rich and the other poor. The rich man had exceeding many flocks and herds, but the poor man had nothing, save one little ewe lamb, which he had bought and nourished up, and it grew up together with him and with his children, and it did eat of his own meat, and drank of his own cup, and lay in his bosom, and was unto him as a daughter. And there came a traveler unto the rich man, and he spared to take of his own flock and of his own herd to dress for the wayfaring man that was come unto him, but took the poor man's lamb and dressed it for the man that was come to him. And David's anger was greatly kindled against the man. And he said to Nathan, As the Lord liveth, the man that hath done this thing shall surely die. And he shall restore the lamb fourfold, because he did this thing, and because he had no pity. And Nathan said to David, Thou art the man. Thus saith the Lord God of Israel, I anointed thee king over Israel, and I delivered thee out of the hand of Saul. And I gave thee thy master's house and thy master's wives into thy bosom, and gave thee the house of Israel and of Judah. And if that had been too little, I would moreover have given unto thee such and such things. Wherefore hast thou despised the commandment of the Lord, to do evil in his sight? Thou hast killed Uriah the Hittite with the sword, and hast taken his wife to be thy wife, and hast slain him with the sword of the children of Ammon. Now, therefore, the sword shall never depart from thine house, because thou hast despised me, and hast taken the wife of Uriah the Hittite to be thy wife. Thus saith the Lord, Behold, I will rise up evil against thee out of thine own house, and I will take thy wives before thine eyes, and give them unto thy neighbor, and he shall lie with thy wives in the sight of the sun. For thou didst it secretly, but I will do this thing before all Israel and before the sun. And David said unto Nathan, I have sinned against the Lord. And Nathan said unto David, The Lord also has put away thy sin, and thou shalt not die. Howbeit, because by this deed thou hast given great occasion to the enemies of the Lord to blaspheme, The child also that is born unto thee shall surely die. And Nathan departed into his house, and the Lord struck the child that Uriah's wife bare unto David, and it was very sick. David therefore besought God for the child, and David fasted and went in and lay all night upon the earth. And the elders of his house arose and went to him to raise him up from the earth, but he would not, neither did he eat bread with them. And it came to pass on the seventh day that the child died. And the servants of David feared to tell him that the child was dead. For they said, Behold, while the child was yet alive, we spake unto him, and he would not hearken unto our voice. How will he then vex himself if we tell him that the child is dead? But David saw that his servants whispered. David perceived that the child was dead. Therefore David said unto the servants, Is the child dead? And they said, He is dead. So the first thing King David lost, something precious he could never get back, was the son born to him in Bathsheba. King David lost the peace from his home and palace. And when the sword comes to live at your house, there is no peace in there. He suffered the successive violent deaths of at least two of his sons, Amnon and Absalom, not to mention the rape of one of his daughters, Tamar. So Tamar's future was taken, and two of his sons were killed. Three precious things he could never get back. So that makes three sons, counting the baby, all irreplaceable. Now remember, y'all, this is a penalty for idolatry. David refused to kill King Saul, who chased him for no reason but jealousy for years, because he felt it would be sinning against God. He would not compromise what he believed was right, but he felt so hard for Bathsheba that he was willing to compromise for her and sin against God. That is the very definition of idolatry. And it was a revelation I got only recently, that anytime you get into idolatry, you lose something precious to you that you can never get back. David's concubines were taken, and in full view of all of Israel. 2 Samuel 12:11. Thus saith the Lord, Behold, I will rise up evil against thee out of thine own house, and I will take thy wives before thine eyes, and give them unto thy neighbor, and he shall lie with thy wives in the sight of this sun. 2 Samuel 16:22. So they spread Absalom a tent upon the top of the house, and Absalom went in unto his father's concubines in the sight of all Israel. So the price for King David's disobedience was very high. Just losing the son he and Bathsheba had, would have been a lot, but he lost far more, far more. Our sin is unfaithfulness to God, and it hurts him. And there is a price to pay when we transgress the commands that he has given us. And if we get into idolatry, we will always lose something very precious to us that we can never get back. Proverbs 17:13. Whoso rewardeth evil for good, evil shall not depart from his house. A friend of mine whose entire life was devoted to God, who intercedes for lost souls and others for hours every single day, told me a story about seeing Proverbs 17:13 in action. So recently he got a phone call from a former coworker. A situation happened when they worked together, for a large, well-known corporation. When an incident happened on the floor where my friend, was a supervisor. And there were two people in the company who wanted him to lie and blame the incident on a particular person who worked there. He, being a devout Christian, refused to lie and do this. So he was demoted, which basically forced him into retirement. Now, so his friend calls this last week, and in the course of conversation casually mentions that both of these two individuals who tried to force him to lie had had strokes since then. And guess what? They were both forced to take retirement because of their strokes. He didn't take any pleasure in the outcome, and he would rather, have seen them repent and get saved. But y'all, we serve a just God who's very protective over his children. And like when you're in the woods and you threaten a mama bear's cubs, it's going to bring some real bad stuff to your doorstep if you mess with them. And a man who is one, of the commenters, and, he posted these stories, and he was even kind enough to find them so I could share them with you, okay? So recently, my old bookkeeper came over to my office in an apparent scam to get a quick $100 from me without intent to follow through with completing the books. She said she finished the books and handed them to me. Loose papers all over the place trying to collect the full price. And I gave them back to her, reminding her that they needed to be inserted in nice, neat presentation covers, just like last year. Also, there were mistakes that needed to be corrected, and she agreed, but still needed a $100 deposit because she needed gas and had to go buy the covers. And I expected, was broke. So she was handed a check for $100, and she was never seen again. Then months later, after hiring another bookkeeper, the old bookkeeper called up, wanting the job back with a terrible story of what happened to her. And she said she was in the hospital all the time with a flesh-eating disease that they couldn't find a cure for. And she said she almost died. Keep in mind, this is Judgment Day, in case anyone hasn't heard of things like this happening before. Sorry about that. I had a notice that popped up on my screen. But next, I recently made a trade deal with my woodcutter to trade a very nice, like new rifle with a carry case and ammo box full of ammo. And we agreed to trade straight across for 2 cords of wood. And I gave him the rifle and showed him all of the parts and pieces and purchase receipts ahead of time so he could inspect the items before agreeing. And after personally handling all the merchandise and looking closely at everything I offered him, he then said sure, he'd make the trade and said he'd like to have the gun. So we agreed and went our separate ways. And after all the wood was delivered, I gave him his new gun package and he left. And a few days later, he called me back complaining that the pawn shop value of the gun I traded him wasn't the same as the value of the wood he delivered. And he said that I stiffed him, and I could hardly believe my ears. I didn't claim any value amount about the items, asking only if I had agreed to the trade. And his choice was either yes or no, nothing else to consider, to claim that I stiffed him. And it wasn't an unfounded, accusation. So the guy says he took it to the Lord and asked for mercy over the situation, telling the Lord I didn't mean him any harm whatsoever, but I'd like to go the extra mile with him and give him a gift or something to put a smile on his face. So I asked the Lord to please orchestrate a follow-up meeting between us so I could do something nice for him. So today, the man just called him back and said that his house just burned down with all that he owned, including his wood business truck, saws, and guns. And he said he's living in his car now. So I asked him what he needs to help him out. And he said he could sure use a sleeping bag. And another story, I know some of your love stories, and I do too when I'm listening to sermons. Well over a decade ago, I was engaged to a man and planning my wedding. And one day out of the blue, he told me he didn't think we should get married. And I was taken completely by shock, as you can imagine. So I ended the relationship, and he turned out to be a liar, and I'm pretty sure a cheater as well, judging by what happened shortly afterwards. So the person says they had been completely devoted to him and treated him really, really well. And he treated me less than wonderful. And when they broke off the relationship after he said he didn't think that they should be together, person says, I don't know about y'all, but I've never been one to hang around where I'm not wanted. And he made it abundantly clear he didn't want me, so the person said I ended it. But you know how it goes. You see a person's true colors when a relationship is ending and they no longer have anything to gain from you. To this day, the person says, I thank God that I didn't marry him. But when the relationship ended, the person was going to sleep one night and praying for him. As he had told me, he had gotten some very bad news, but the news to the tune of a letter from the IRS that he owed over $18,000 for a prior year when he had not paid any taxes. So I really felt for him on that. Even if he did break my heart, it says, because I cared about him. So I'm laying there praying for him, and suddenly the Lord spoke to me. Do not pray against my judgments. Gasp. Oh Lord, I'm so sorry. I did not know that's what that was. And I stopped praying for him. So not long after that, in less than a year, he was working on a car and he was a mechanic. And the gas tank blew up and he burned on his arms and some on his face. And the place where he worked burned down, which was his best friend's business. And it was because of the gas tank he was working on. I don't know how many customers' vehicles were destroyed in that fire, or if the friend had any insurance on the place. Within a year, he married some other woman, and she filed for divorce 6 weeks later. There are just things I know about, and I know God well enough to know there was more. The Lord just doesn't take it, well when you mistreat one of his children that has done only good to you. Proverbs 17:13. Whoso rewardeth evil for good, evil shall not depart from his house. So we can see just from a few stories we have heard that the return of evil for good is a very bad idea. And I want to mention something here. Returning evil for good doesn't just mean some friend you think has done you wrong. Returning evil for good will have the same effect in the person you do it to. If it's your spouse, your parent, your child, your coworker, your friend, someone at your church, your pastor, a spiritual leader you see on TV, someone in your community. You've got to remember that, someone that you don't even know, or someone you just talked to at a customer service center. Anyone, the rules are the same, no matter who it is. So sometimes we return evil for good, thinking someone has cited us or done something they really have not done. Satan can work in people's minds and make them think things that aren't true, can't he? I mean, he will try to make you think someone has wronged you, so you'll strike, out at them because he hates them. So let's talk for a minute about how we're supposed to act when we think we've been done wrong. The Lord tells us everything we need to know in his word, y'all. How to act, how to react. It's all in there. And it's all to protect you. I mean, the commandments are not just made up ideas. They are your protection if you will follow him. So reading from Romans chapter 12, 16, be on the same mind one toward another, mind not high things, but condescend to men of low estate. In other words, treat everybody the same. Be not wise in your own conceits. That part there helps a lot. Be not wise in your own conceits. Don't think you know everything, and don't give into those prideful thoughts, and you will avoid a lot of trouble or yourself just by doing that, okay? I mean, let's keep going, because Romans chapter 12 has a lot to say about this subject. 17. Recompense to no man evil for evil. Provide things honest in the sight of all men. In other words, do what's right, being mindful that people are watching you for the Christian response. So they're watching you to see if you'll do the right thing. If you really believe what you say, you believe because they, want to know if you are real, honest, and truthful or not. Show them the right response and you honor God, and show them the wrong one and you just honored Satan. If it be possible, as much as lieth in you, live peaceably with all men. And this means if you can work it out and live at peace with everyone, there are times when you cannot do that. But it should not be every time. And if it's every time, you need to look in the mirror at the common denominator. in these situations and figure out why you're always fighting with people. Dearly beloved, avenge not yourselves, but rather give place unto wrath, for it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord. Give place means leave room for God to do what is his and only his right to do. Repay evil. We are not without sin, so we have no right to repay evil. Only he does. So basically, if you enjoy repaying evil, go into spiritual warfare, you can beat up demons every day and still be doing what's right. 20 says, therefore, if thine enemy hunger, feed him. If he thirst, give him drink. For in so doing, thou shalt heap coals of fire on his head. I mean, have you ever fed your enemy and watched their response? It's an incredible feeling, and sometimes it breaks the evil spirit operating in them. It won't break a Jezebel because she has no feelings, but it will break through a wall of hurt and pride if that's what's causing them to act ugly towards you. I mean, be not overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good. We don't know what's in a person's soul or when they do evil to us, but the Lord wants us to give a righteous response and let him, the only true righteous judge, decide how they should be repaid. He knows why they did what they did to you, and he knows what kind of payback that really, they really deserve. And y'all, he is so much better at this than we are. And he is paying evil faster than ever now because of the lateness of the hour. I mean, we all know people who just thrive on revenge, and they're angry and prideful people who just love to show the power that they can wield to pay back, to pay you back, basically. I mean, if you didn't do what they think you did, I have an ongoing situation in my life from over a decade ago like this. A Jezebel spirit that just refuses truth, refuses salvation, and is very intent on my destruction. God has protected me, and that's the only reason that I'm still here and able to speak to you today. And I praise him often for that because many attempts have been made. I'm I am where I am because the Lord sent me, this message to go, that I was in danger. So I prayed several times in the presence of the Lord where I was supposed to go. And every single time, the leading was to where I am now. So the urgency was very strong as I packed as fast as I possibly could and did everything possible to find a house, to live in. So anyway, we got where we are, and we got in this little small place with multiple issues. Issues with the oven, issues with the refrigerator, issues with the floor. We didn't have any heating, a fireplace with the flue that no longer opened properly. But it was poorly maintained, but it did allow my family to get moved. And it's a good thing I did because I just found out this week that person was just about to come after me again. So, when I'm asking you, about not paying someone back who hurt you, please understand that I live every day with holding back from taking revenge. And this person wants to and is still trying to destroy me. And I've had the chance, to land a devastating blow. And I mean, I'm talking about serious devastation. And I would have been completely in the right by making that move, and that it would, not have required me to do anything wrong. And I could have shut that person down for at least, the next 10 years or so. But, the Lord is more important to me than feeling like I've got somebody paid back. Even returning evil for evil is wrong for a Christian. We're supposed to return good for evil, and so overcome evil with good. So when we return evil for evil, we perpetuate the evil, and we help the devil's work on the earth. And that's not what we're supposed to be doing. No matter how much someone hurts us, y'all. Seriously. And this can be very difficult because it requires you to control your flesh in favor of a more godly response. And this is what it means to crucify your flesh. You refuse to let it have what it wants, and you make it, submit to what God wants instead. So we're not supposed to return evil for good or evil for evil. We're supposed to be doing good in the earth, not evil, period. You know, there's certain people, certain ones of us that we get attacked on a regular basis. It's just common. It's just, it's normal. And a lot of times we don't understand why these things take place, why they're being done to us, why. We just question why. And the response always is because, they hate God. They hate the God that's in you. They hate it. They see that light in you and that goodness about you, and they hate you for it. And you'll always be hated for it because they hate God first. They hated God first, so they're going to hate you, you know? So, in talking about returning evil for good, let's remember that if we gleefully open the gates of destruction on someone who's done only good to us, even if we think that they've done something bad to us, and this is why we need to let God repay, y'all. We're also opening the gates of destruction, okay, on our own lives. And it affects not just us, but our children as well. I mean, those gates may bring the one you disdain sorrow, but they will bring you even more sorrow, for your sorrow will be long term when destruction comes to your house and refuses to leave. You've got to remember that. Proverbs 17:13. Whoso rewardeth evil for good, evil shall not depart from his house. So you are welcoming evil into your house to stay. And I don't think King David had any idea the day he sent for Bathsheba, knowing she was the wife of another man, that he was throwing wide the gates of destruction into the palace, into his family, and on himself. He was a highly honored king, used to having whatever he wanted, who loved beautiful women. He had stayed behind and was laying around the palace when his army went to war. So in the time when kings went to battle, so he wasn't really where he was supposed to be. And that's always a chance for the devil to tempt us, isn't it? When we're not where we're supposed to be. So we need to be very aware and be careful not to return evil for evil when someone wrongs us, no matter how much it hurts. And we especially need to be careful not to return evil for good or return evil when we think someone has done us wrong, because if they really haven't done us wrong, destruction will not depart from our house. But I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you. Even though striking at your enemies or someone you feel upset at may feel good in the moment, the destruction that you can cause, that can come out of fighting fire with fire, can have effects that last a lifetime. Choose to do right, do it God's way, keep your side of the street clean, and he will avenge you. His ways are so much better. Hey, Peanut, good to see you here. I can't see chat while I'm doing this. I have to wait until I come on over when I finish. So it's good to see you. So anyway, I hope that message was cohesive and it helped some people out. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here, and let's see if this stream actually posts or if it gets deleted too. Because like I stated, the last two live streams that I've done, for some reason, they've been deleted from StreamYard and from YouTube. And it wasn't me who deleted them, so that's just so bizarre. Yeah. Okay. So, God willing, I'm still here and kicking. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace be still, and y'all be well.